morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Happy spring day, which is great for everyone except for those of us who have allergies. So if anyone needs to get an extra Kleenex or something during the meeting, we will understand that. Would like to call the meeting of the California High-Speed Rail Authority to order and start with roll call. Tom? Everyone's
Here.
Vice Chair Richards.
Here.
Director Curtin. Director Lowenthal.
Here.
Director Camacho.
Here.
Director Miller.
Here.
Senator Bell.
Here.
Assemblymember Rambula. Chairman Johnson.
here. Okay. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, now is the time for public comment, and a reminder that anyone who would like to make a public comment, please submit one of these green cards. We have one card, and I am going to apologize in advance from someone whose name gets mispronounced all the time that I may mispronounce your name. But I think this, if I can read the handwriting, is Ivor Sampson. My apologies if I did not pronounce that properly.
Mr. Chairman, you got it pretty right. My handwriting is not the easiest to read. I'll confess to that. Good morning, members of the authority. My name is Ivor Sampson. I'm an attorney with Denton's, and I represent the Fresno Rescue Mission. The Fresno Rescue Mission has a 13-acre campus and 11 buildings that are being totally taken by the high-speed rail. The condemnation case is set for trial in March of next year, and it will be the subject of a fairly contentious jury trial. We have worked cooperatively with the high-speed rail for almost 5 years now to allow the rescue mission to be relocated to temporary quarters in a way and in a time frame to allow seamless, uninterrupted operation of the mission while allowing high-speed rail to keep its schedule. We agreed to an early possession, and we agreed to a relocation agreement. And that was the result of extensive year-long negotiations. And I'd like to, I don't think Ephraim Egan is here, but certainly Diana Gomez is here. And the success of those negotiations are in large part due to her efforts, and that needs to be recognized. However, high-speed rail has squandered the goodwill that was created by years of cooperative effort due to delays, lack of communications, and frankly, what appears to be misrepresentations from Sacramento over the last 8 months. We have been trying to get an amended relocation agreement since last July. And the purpose for this is to allow for the purchase of leased buildings, temporary buildings, that the mission leased across the street from the old facility as a temporary temporary use to allow continuous operation. The deadline for acquisition has been pushed from last December to February to March. Last I heard, according to HSR, it was supposed to be April 1, and that deadline has certainly been blown. We've gotten numerous, well, I shouldn't say numerous, we've had 2 drafts of agreements. We've promptly provided comments on those agreements, and then they disappear. It's like dealing with a black hole. We get nothing from high-speed rail on the status of these agreements, no word on our comments. Our emails asking for updates are unanswered. Everything disappears in a black hole. In February, we were told by Caltrans attorney Ephraim Egan that an escrow for purchase had been funded and a document would be forthcoming. This is in February. March, we were told that it was waiting on Mr. Donald Odell's desk for signature. We've yet to see anything. Our emails asking about the status are not even responded to. Not even we're looking into it. We'll get back to you. Nothing. No responses whatsoever. And in fact, due to high-speed rail's delays, we've been unable to buy the buildings and have to continue the lease obligations. It got to the point last month in March where basically the mission ran out of money to pay for the lease payments from the vendors. The payments were overdue, and it wasn't until my firm got further involved and started pushing some buttons that we got money from high-speed rail to continue the lease payments as required and provided for in the relocation agreement. These ongoing leases are a waste of taxpayers' money. Even worse, the inefficiency and the unprofessional way in which this whole business has been handled is a disaster. And this is all set forth in my letter of March 25, 3 weeks ago, and I'll give this to the clerk in a moment with the attachment. That was 3 weeks ago, and a letter to Mr. Odell, no response to that letter. We're quite frankly at wit's end. We're starting to prepare for a complex, very public condemnation case. The authorities' lack of cooperation and failure to communicate does not bode well for any possibility of a settlement down the road. You've failed miserably in the communications sector. Something needs to change, and I solicit the authorities' help in doing something here. Thank you.
Okay.
And
Thank
if I
you for your
may
comments.
provide
Please,
these documents.
Please do that. Thank you. Are there any other public commentary cards?
No.
Okay. Thank you. Now we will move on to item number 1, considering the approval of the March 19th board meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Are there any further comments? Take the roll, please.
Director Shane,
Yes.
Vice Chair Richards,
Yes.
Director Lowenthal,
Yes.
Director Camacho,
Yes.
Director Miller,
Yes.
Chairman Donza.
Yes. Approved. Thank you. Can we move on to item number 2? Consider approving the revisions to the sustainability report and an update on policy implementation and progress. Meg, please.
There we go. Yes, and I believe you have a hard copy in front of you. Great.
Great.
So, good morning, Chairman Mendonça and Vice Chair Richards and members of the boards. And thank you for the opportunity to review some of the highlights of implementation to date of the authority's sustainability program and to brief you on the recommended revisions to the authority's sustainability policy. California, of course, is a national leader in considering how to evolve our industry, economy, and transportation in ways that enhance and maintain the quality of life in this, the 5th largest economy in the world, and the future home of millions more residents. In 2008, the citizens of California voted on how to move our existing and future populations to deliver mobility that was necessary to maintain our economy in a way that would not damage the environment. The system establishes a backbone of clean transportation and transforms interregional travel in this state. As you can see on this graph, because the project will shift interregional travel away from planes and cars, it will contribute greenhouse gas reductions in the transportation sector, which are crucial to the state's climate goals, while also reinforcing compact growth patterns centered in existing urban areas, helping to minimize the development pressure on agricultural lands and the natural systems vital to the state's economy. Sustainability encapsulates these drivers, meeting the needs of our current society without sacrificing the capacity of future generations to meet their needs. Since 2013, the authority has had a policy to deliver a sustainable high-speed rail system while setting a model for sustainable rail infrastructure. The authority's approach to sustainability is comprehensive, looking at all aspects of delivery, from planning, design, construction, through operation and maintenance. This approach reflects both the ambitions of California, but it is also honoring the specifics of what we are delivering, which is a modern, certified high-speed rail system. The board's leadership has already identified several public policy leading commitments, adopting a policy goal to operate the system entirely on clean renewable energy, pledging to achieve net zero construction greenhouse gas emissions, and focusing on cleaner implementation practices that bear positive results for the communities in which we are constructing. I'll step through a summary of progress around these 5 priority areas that make up the sustainability framework, and then I'll detail the process and the key revisions made to the authority's sustainability policy. The authority committed to net zero criteria air pollutants from construction. To date, this has been achieved through the twinned activities of reducing emissions on site while offsetting within the air district. As illustrated here, we continue to see positive cumulative results from the existing requirements for Tier 4 off-road equipment and CARB-compliant newer on-road fleets. We reference this fact often, but it bears repeating. The use of Tier 4 engines means that for several pollutants, our sites are about 60% cleaner than the average California site. And this bears repeating because we need to retain scrupulous attention to contractor fleet sourcing, equipment sourcing, as well as site activity as we accelerate work in the valley and move to new procurements. After reduction, of course, comes offsetting, and through the voluntary emissions reduction agreement with the San Joaquin Air District, over 1,300 lifetime tons of criteria air pollutants have already been offset within the valley. This is far outpacing the production of those emissions on site. It is important to stakeholders that we contribute not only to improving air quality, but also managing greenhouse gas emissions now. The authority also committed to neutralizing the greenhouse gas emissions associated with diesel and gasoline equipment and vehicles used to build the system. This is a unique commitment for any infrastructure project in the United States and a rare commitment globally. We've looked at projects in the UK and Sweden, Australia, and Canada, and each place has approached this notion of zero carbon infrastructure or carbon neutral infrastructure in a way that's very unique and specifically relevant to their local context. So too have we. By focusing on tree planting in disadvantaged communities throughout the state, residents enjoy shade, air quality, and other benefits in the near term. We have excellent partners in Tree Fresno and the California Urban Forest Council, and now we've seen already nearly 1,000 trees in the ground, with many more to follow in the coming year. But we know areas of the delivery where we can reduce and minimize emissions while also maintaining cost and schedule, including requiring plug-in electric hybrid vehicles or other zero emissions vehicles for on-site travel, on-road travel, and renewable diesel or emerging heavy-duty electric equipment for off-road activity. Sustainable infrastructure at the authority means we attend both to on-site practices now and also focus on building resilient infrastructure that supports resilience for decades to come. As this graph illustrates, because the authority requires recycling of all concrete and steel from construction and 75% of all other non-hazardous materials, that means hundreds of thousands of tons of materials are diverted from landfills and reincorporated into the local supply chain. In terms of resilient infrastructure, state guidance is clear that we should analyze system assets against climate stressors, and work we have continued to progress. The team has coordinated with functional and discipline leads across the authority in detail to understand where and how best to incorporate climate data into system design or operations requirements. And it is finalizing a climate adaptation plan that memorializes this work. As well, the team is in the process of refining design criteria for key facets of the infrastructure that specifically address climate stressors, which is really taking a proactive approach to climate risk. Respect of natural resources is at the heart of sustainability. A project of this scale and geographic and time horizon presents the opportunity to approach mitigation thoughtfully and integrate it at the landscape level. Already more than 2,500 acres of natural lands, natural habitat have been restored, and 1,200 acres of agricultural land have been identified for permanent conservation easements. To some, the scale of the project presents a risk to natural lands. However, because Prop 1A required the authority to hew very closely to existing transportation corridors, the result is that the high-speed rail permanent footprint is much more concentrated in developed land than is the regional average. In somewhat quantitative terms, approximately 79% of our footprint is in developed land, while only 12% of the region is developed land. So this indicates an accomplishment in terms of avoiding natural land and agricultural lands. Now, for long-term accomplishment of the state's climate goals and development goals, and for system success, customers must get to the stations and onto the system. The authorities provided approximately $10 million to station communities to revise the appropriate local land use and zoning plans so that they not only take the station into account, but create a vision for how the high-speed rail investment can revitalize these areas. To date, Fresno and Bakersfield have completed this work with plans that emphasize how the station can create hubs of activities in their downtown cores. But while plans are necessary, the necessary regulatory structure to enable denser infill development in downtown cores, there are still missing pieces to this crucial part of the transformative opportunity that the high-speed rail system presents. Markets in many of these station cities are not yet poised to implement the type of development that best takes advantage of and feeds the rail investment with riders. The authority, working with its city partners and other rail providers, has explored some tools that fill investment gaps or that can capture the new value created by the rail service to then further development and investment, including affordable housing. The fifth and final priority area is economic development and governance. California has made a large investment of cap-and-trade proceeds to the high-speed rail. The proceeds from cap-and-trade are intended to deliver benefits now to communities that have endured the most economic, social, and environmental hardships. Our jobs, small business, and overall economic investment results are very positive, as you heard last month from the CFO. Based on the data we have, over 1,000 workers are coming from disadvantaged communities. That's over 45% of the workforce. The stories that we've gathered from these workers and small businesses illustrate the very real benefit that the program delivery is already having. So the progress to date is a reflection of early and consistent commitment to sustainability approaches guided by a comprehensive policy. We based our initial approach on global best practice, reviewing both peer rail organizations and operators, but grounding it in the particular values and the regulatory structure of California. The existing policy implementation has yielded enviable results, though of course we can always improve. And in the spirit of continuous improvement, the authority repeated its materiality assessment this past fall, conferring with more than 24 internal and external stakeholders, among them board members and executive and program delivery staff, on the sustainability topics that we manage and report on. They confirmed that we are addressing pertinent topics and helped us identify refinements to the priorities and commitments. The notable revisions, on the next slide, fall into 3 categories. Some memorialize agency practice in the policy. For example, we have implemented water conservation throughout construction, as of course was logical for a project that began during the drought. But we now additionally emphasize efficiency and conservation in operation. And given state guidance, we are clear about taking a proactive approach to climate adaptation. Some revisions reflect the evolution since 2016 of the delivery organization. As recommended in the audit report, we categorized each commitment by construction, operation, or planning phase. Finally, revisions reflect the values that stakeholders expect of our delivery. We now explicitly cross-reference the percentages set in the small business policy and have indicated that the authority should play a role to positively influence through its partnerships, not just infill development in the station districts, but also affordable housing, given the crisis in the state. Moving ahead, the team will continue to implement key aspects of sustainability, such as renewable energy planning, specifically analysis of storage as a tool to minimize operations costs, management of greenhouse gas emissions, and sustainable design for facilities, as well as coordinate across the organization to maintain concentration on the issues of highest priority to our stakeholders. Reporting and transparency are perennial activities. We will continue quarterly reporting on construction progress. And early this summer, we will submit our 4th response to the GRESB infrastructure benchmark. As I've reported previously to the board, investors who control trillions of dollars in capital are demanding standardized, accurate, and comparable environmental, social, and governance data to factor into their investment decisions. While we rely on high-quality assessments and benchmarks in order to understand where we are relative to our peers and where we can improve. Using GRESB since early in the development phase of our project has provided key feedback on performance, as well as a consistent reporting track record that assists in securing investor backing. This assembly of data will also complete the annual sustainability report, which details the progress across the program and goes into greater specificity on some of the issues that I've summarized today. This agency has had a successful program because of the wisdom and dedication to implementation of everyone across the agency. Everyone on the program contributes to some aspect of sustainability and creating a high-speed rail system that will transform the state. That's my summary, and I'd like to take any questions you have.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Questions from the board? Questions or comments?
Yeah, I have a basic one. First of all, I'd appreciate if you numbered your slides so I can refer to the number.
Of course.
The one on energy and emissions. What is a lifetime ton? Is that 1,300 lifetimes, or I don't know what it is.
It's we measure the offset by how long the new project will be in place. That's the lifetime of the project. So we've already offset 1,300 tons of criteria air pollutants as measured by the lifetime of the project.
Is that just a number? Can you put it in context? What does that mean? Is that a good thing, a medium thing, a bad thing?
It's a good thing. It's a good thing. It's to date on the project, we've probably only created about 300 tons of criteria pollutants across the major categories. But by working with the San Joaquin Air District, they've taken the funds we've provided and they've already carried out all of the projects that deliver offsets. So what we see is kind of a net neutral effect for the entire airshed.
So, I'm sure my colleagues are expert in this area, but I'm not. And so, if you wouldn't mind putting things in context for me. I mean,
of course.
The number sounds like a big number, but I don't know what it really means. So, thank you.
Any other questions or comments from other board members? Yes.
No, I was going to move the item.
Oh. I just have one comment that I personally believe that delivering a high-speed rail system that serves as a model for sustainable rail infrastructure is not only important, it's essential. If you really want to have an inclusive economy that's sustainable for all Californians, when we're doing major projects, making sure that we're consciously measuring and assessing these things and reporting on them transparently is as important as our fiscal obligations. So appreciate the attention to this and really look forward to the ongoing reporting and communication of the impacts in ways that Board Member Schenk said are both technically correct and also accessible to the public. So thank you.
Good, thank you.
Happily move this item.
Second.
Any other? Can you call the roll, please?
Director Schenk,
Yes.
Vice Chair Richards,
Yes.
Director Lowenthal,
Yes.
Director Camacho,
Yes.
Director Miller,
Yes.
Chairman Donza.
Yes. Thank you. Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, now we'll move on to item 3, the CEO report. Thank you.
Good morning, Chairman Mendonca, Vice Chairman Richards, and board members. I'm Barbara Rooney. I'm the Deputy Director of Legislation here at the Authority and assisting today with the CEO response with our CEO, Brian Kelly. We're going to begin with a 6-month audit response. As you know, the state auditor issued her report in November 2018. The report identified a number of issues, primarily relating to contract management and documenting decisions. We did submit our 60-day response to the auditor in January, and we are now in the process of preparing our 6-month response, which is due on May 15th, 2019. I'm pleased to convey that we have made significant progress in implementing the auditor's recommendations. We have strengthened our processes, made staffing adjustments, updated our policies and procedures, and provided training to supervisors and managers and contract managers. I have also directed a broader office-by-office review of the functionality of state and contract positions to ensure that we have proper alignment of state and contract staff to functionality throughout the organization. While the auditor pointed out some concerns here in functions like contract management, budget, and accounting, I think a broader review is warranted to ensure that the organization's form meets function. I have asked for this review to be completed by the end of this fiscal year so we can prepare any necessary budget adjustments by fiscal year 2021. We've been working closely with the state auditor in implementing the recommendations, and I want to express my appreciation and respect for her and her staff's professionalism and willingness to work collaboratively with us as we address these important organizational issues. Next, the project update report. On May 1st, 2019, we will be submitting to the legislature our project update report for this year, also known as PUR. Typically, the PUR is a simple update on project status that statutorily requires us to cover broad project updates, including milestones reached over the preceding 2 years, program issues requiring our attention, and specific risks that must be managed. In years past, the project update report has not come before the board as either an informational item or an action item. This year's report is different. It is primarily different because this year's report will address specific issues we raised in the 2018 business plan and committed to updating in the 2019 project update report. Specifically, the PUR will report on the following. The first item, our early train operator, or ETO's, analysis of interim service options that we deemed worthy of consideration in the 2018 business plan in both the Central Valley and the Peninsula in Northern California. I can tell you now that the ETO's review confirms that the direction the authority has been pursuing to construct a valley-to-valley service connecting the Central Valley with the Silicon Valley remains the highest value operating segment for authority-run service. However, just as the authority and the FRA have been discussing since 2013, if the valley-to-valley service faces funding or other challenges that could delay its completion, it is worthwhile to consider earlier interim services to ensure the assets built in the Central Valley with federal and state funds can provide independent utility for rail service and demonstrate the benefits of high-speed rail in California. Toward that end, the project update report will discuss 4 options the ETO looked at in the Central Valley and describe the rationale for its conclusion that the best option for early service in the Valley is the Merced-Fresno-Bakersfield segment. Number 2, the project update report will also include the ETO's review of our capital costs contained in the 2018 business plan. I'm happy to report that the ETO suggests there are opportunities for cost savings on the vital structures, bridges, viaducts, tunnels that make up our system. The report will discuss the recommendations the ETO made in this regard and the actions we will take to implement those recommendations going forward. I anticipate this work will help us further refine our cost estimates for the entirety of the Phase 1 system as we develop the 2020 business plan, now due in just 10 short months. And third, the project update report will also summarize the results of the work we've been doing since the adoption of the 2018 business plan to apply enhanced Monte Carlo risk analysis to those estimates and further refine and update scope and cost to complete the work in the Central Valley. On the funding side, the project update report will take a slightly different tack than we did in the 2018 business plan. In that plan, we estimated available revenues assuming an extension of the cap and trade program until 2050 and additional statutory authority to ensure we could finance against those revenues. We recognize that the legislature just extended the cap and trade program until 2030 with the enactment of AB 398 in 2017. We heard loud and clear the challenges associated with our suggestion that it should be extended another 20 years now. rather than assume more funding from another extension at this time, the PER identifies the considerable amount of funding available to this program through 2030 and proposes how best to utilize the funding we expect to have over the next decade. In summary, the work performed by the ETO on early service options, the updated risk-based cost analysis, and the realistic funding assumptions combine to form the basis of management's recommendation to pursue an early interim service in the Central Valley, working closely with our regional operating partners, Altamont Corridor Express, ACE, and the San Joaquin Intercity Service, while we continue to prepare the valley-to-valley service for construction as additional funding becomes available. Of course, we also propose to complete the environmental work statewide and maintain our commitment to complete the bookend projects in the Silicon Valley and the Los Angeles Basin. This approach will enable the vital economic benefits in the Central Valley to expand while we prepare to demonstrate the environmental and mobility benefits of a high-speed rail service with the funding we reasonably expect to have between now and 2030. The PER is due to the legislature on May 1st. Staff will be reaching out to you all to offer detailed, individualized briefings on the report beginning next week. Board members, I believe the best way to restore credibility to this program and agency is to improve our project delivery, which we are poised to do. Make sure we keep our commitments and do exactly what we say we're going to do. We made commitments in the 2018 business plan to our regional partners and to our federal partner. We also made commitments to the legislature and the public regarding the analyses and work we would perform since the adoption of the 2018 business plan to provide important program updates in this project update report. That is exactly what we have done. I look forward to briefing you all in greater detail on this important document and engaging policymakers on the direction of this program. Next, a quick update on the Federal Railroad Administration. On March 4th, we submitted 2 letters to the FRA challenging its intended action to deobligate $929 million in FY10 federal funding for this project. To date, we have received no response to our March 4th letter. While the FRA has disengaged on the environmental review process, we are moving forward with state approvals for CEQA purposes and continue to prepare work for FRA approval when and if it re-engages. And finally, it is with truly mixed emotions that I report to you the departure of Doug Drotes from the authority. Doug has worked here for 7 years now, primarily as the dedicated staff liaison to the board. He has done outstanding work to make sure we prepare for and execute these board meetings, and I must say those tasks will be much harder in his absence. Doug has been presented with an excellent opportunity. He will become the head of government affairs for the city of West Sacramento, and I am certain he will do great work in this new role. I have truly enjoyed working with Doug. In addition to being a fine employee, Doug is a good man with an excellent sense of humor and an increasingly rare ability to write well. I'm going to miss Doug, and I ask you all to join me in wishing him the very best in his next endeavor.
I learned a lot of things on this project, and a lot of things from the board especially. One thing I learned from our past chairman was brevity is key. So I will just say thank you for this wonderful opportunity. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I will continue to be a strong advocate for high-speed rail throughout my career. So thank you.
Very good.
Mr. Chairman, that concludes our...
Okay. So comments or questions from board members? Yes.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Brian. I'd like to see a copy of that, if that's possible. I think probably the other of the report.
Yes.
It would be great to have that. And I'm curious about the funding assumptions. You talked about the early train operator being able to find savings. That I didn't understand what that was all about.
On your first question, absolutely. As soon as we complete the draft, we'll be sure you get that.
Thank you.
You're talking about
again, our
Yeah, the report we just
Yeah,
Just
our
the
early-
written, she's talking about the written report, just share that.
Yes, yes. You're talking about the project update report itself, correct? No?
Yeah, well, what you just read, I think
Oh,
would be great for the authority
Abs-
members to have it, but.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the
Yeah, and then
funding.
on the other point, our early train operator, again, did a review of all of our capital cost estimates that we had in the 2018 business plan, and they, through their experience, looking at those cost estimates, they did identify opportunities for savings in bridges, viaducts, and tunnels. Again, the details of those we can give you in your briefing. I don't personally have those details, but there are some significant savings opportunities that the ETO has presented to us that we are pursuing.
Thank you. Yeah, I would appreciate seeing that, and perhaps the other members would like to get that too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ernie.
What, the Valley to Valley cost, could we get a copy of the elements that were actually put into that total cost? I mean, did it cover row, third-party agreements, the issues with BNSF, construction, and what contingencies we applied to that?
Yes, because the Valley to Valley is still in environmental stages, these are estimates that need refinement, but we will provide the cost estimates.
And also if they included stations and those elements.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
Mine's really not a question. It's just to thank you for being on time with these reports and to also be more transparent about the costs and the issues facing us in the future. So I appreciate that.
I don't know if my voice is loud enough. Doug, thank you for your years of service. Thank you for putting up with us. Thank you for keeping us where we need to be, and we'll miss you, but wish you all the best in your new endeavor.
Hear, hear.
Tom?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just as a matter of clarification with regards to process, so as I think we understand, the project update report is a report mandated by the legislature, so it'll be there May the 1st. And as you pointed out, it's not something that we've typically, in fact, we've never acted on it. With regards to what may come out of the work that management has been doing with regards to looking at alternatives, which, as I understand and recall from our 2020 business plan, or our 2018 business plan, we suggested we would always be looking at alternatives. But assuming that that moves forward, and certainly the governor's made it clear that he is interested in looking at alternatives, this one apparently specifically, that action or the recommendation of management will then come back to this board along with a full presentation and I'm sure briefing in advance, and a change in direction would then be a action that this board would consider at some future date, I assume not later than the 2020 business plan, but likely in advance of that. Is that all correct?
Correct. The project update report is a recommendation for a path forward that will require board action to execute. Okay. And that would happen prior to the 2020.
The project update report is simply a report. The recommendation for a change would come from management to this board if management so chooses. And all of the necessary documentation, research, studies, updated ridership and revenue numbers, those kinds of things, making sure that we know exactly what we're what we are looking at with regards to upon that presentation, a number that incorporates all costs from today to operations. I assume that also is what we would be looking at and acting on.
Correct. An implementation plan, a budget cost schedule will require board review.
Okay. And how the whole
and approval.
system's going to work in compliance with Proposition 1A and all that sort of thing. So I think it then is clear to all of us up here that that amount of work, which is really somewhat unusual for what we've done in the past on an interim basis, is something that will be much of the same kind of work that we've normally gone through in looking at a business plan in the alternate years before board action. So at least from my part, I'll look forward to the receipt and evaluation of all that information and recognize it's a tremendous amount of work that we've probably already done and still have to do.
Okay.
The other, yes.
Yeah, so I understand, Tom, what you just said. We will get then a side-by-side comparison of all the alternatives and the justification for a recommendation.
I don't know if you're asking me that, but we've asked for a side-by-side comparison in finance and audit of valley to valley and this alternative that management is looking at. I don't know at this point whether that will be something that the chairman wants to move on to a board presentation also, but clearly finance and audit wants to look at the side-by-side comparison of the two alternatives.
Well, but if staff is going to make a recommendation, they have to compare it against something, I guess I'm saying. And we should then be able to look at the alternatives. I think the governor made a statement about taking a pause and looking at alternatives for what we're doing, and so we should then be presented with those alternatives.
I think the one thing that I took away of a number of things from the state of the state, and I think what we're really alluding to here is to be consistent with, I think, what the governor's looking for. One of the things that we want to absolutely avoid is criticism for not having done a thorough investigation of what is being proposed and what will be asked, I assume, for the board to consider. And so I can't state firmly enough the importance of providing a very in-depth presentation that's supported by the work that's necessary to make a recommendation that is a substantial change, in fact, a major change in direction from where we've been in the past. And I, for one, as I suspect all of my colleagues, will be looking very carefully at the basis of the proposal or the recommendation to us to ensure that we are comfortable that we are being very clear in how we're acting and is consistent with what the governor talked about in terms of transparency, but ensuring that the decisions we're making are decisions that have been weighed because of an abundance of knowledge and results of those studies, as opposed to doing something and then finding out a few months later we missed one thing or another. So I guess what I would suggest, and I'm sure it's already considered, I don't think anybody intends to rush to a decision here, but rather provide the recommendation at whatever point in the process that you believe that all of the work that's necessary to consider, excuse me, a decision like this will have been completed and presented in a coherent presentation with the supporting documentation that the board's comfortable in considering an action like this.
One second, and he'll respond, and I have a question and a comment on that as well from a chair standpoint.
Would have a response. Okay, the recommendation of how to move forward is largely based on what we can afford to do. The change of direction, to me, is to not commit to outcomes we cannot identify funding for. We will present our best case to the board, and the board will provide us with the policy direction.
Excellent.
Okay. And
Thank you, Brian.
And just from the chair standpoint, the Finance and Audit Committee's deliberations and documents are all public, and the public is invited to that, and then they are summarized at the board. So we will be having a summary of that and reviewed at this board as well. And I think I heard you say, I just wanted to ensure that that's true, that we will be seeing a delineation and a quantification of the risks involved in the entire project, and be very transparent about what the nature of those look like and what the potential financial impact of them are. Okay.
Yes.
Great, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, I'm sure we all can agree that, first of all, it's a lot of work to get this done. We very much look forward to the project update report, and we'll be executing our fiduciary obligation to go through it in great detail before we move forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Now I'd like to move to a quick comment from Tom Richards on the Finance and Audit Committee. We just completed that now. Do you want to say anything, Tom?
I'd be happy to, Mr. Chairman. As we noted last month, we had everybody from our board was already there. In the interest of the time, I'm happy to pass on this, or I can make a short presentation if you'd like.
I think everyone was there, so if everyone's okay, we'll just move on to.
And it was public, as you pointed out, a public hearing, and we had people from the public there also.
Okay. Senator Bell, are you okay with moving just with that, dispensing with that? Okay. Okay. Then with that, any other comments or questions or other items from the board? Okay, then I think we will move to closed session and then return to adjourn the meeting. Nothing to report coming out of the closed session, so the meeting is adjourned.